Hi guys, this is Mim from Problem Solve Training. I'm here with a little tutorial video that's going to work you through the steps for teaching your dog how to do mat work or place training, which is where we teach our dog to go to a mat on cue or go to a spot on cue and stay there lying down until we release our dog from the mat. All kinds of great practical applications for this. I use Matwork while I'm cleaning my house, when I have company over, all kinds of different training projects, anytime where you might want your dog to just be out of the way and stationary for a little bit. All right, so first of all, what do we need before we get started for mat work? You don't need much. You need your dog, you need a mat of some kind. In this video, you're gonna see me using an elevated dog bed, one of those beds that has little legs that lifts it off the ground, but you could also use a regular dog bed. You could use a towel, a bath mat, a yoga mat. It doesn't really matter, just something that the dog can identify as their place where they're supposed to be. We also need a supply of small treats because we're going to do a lot of kind of rapid fire treating in the beginning stages. So we want little tiny treats that are going to be easy for your dog to chew on, something small, something probably soft and easy to get down. And then the last thing we need is a marker. The most common markers that we use are either a clicker or just the word yes, a verbal marker. In this video, you're going to see me using yes because I didn't feel like taking a clicker out for this video. But if you wanted to do this same training with a clicker, you would just do a click every time you heard me say yes instead. For those who are not familiar with marker training, just really quickly, that's where we just mark the behaviors that we like before we reward them. So I say yes or I click when the dog is doing the behavior that's earning the reinforcement that I'm about to give them, and then I reward them. And it just helps with communication and make sure our dog understands exactly what it is that we're rewarding, makes our patterns for training more predictable, and gives some structure to it that's really helpful for our dog at kind of figuring out what we're trying to do. So step one is just where I teach my dog that it is valuable to move to the mat, that they get lots of reinforcement when they go and they land on their mat, and that there is a release cue to this pattern. So that we go to this spot, this mat, this bed, we get lots of treats for hanging out there, and then I'm going to hear a word that means, okay, you can get up off of the mat. That's the most important step at first. I don't focus on being able to walk away from the dog or do anything distracting or anything. I just want the dog to understand there's value in this mat. I can move to the mat and I can stay there, and the human's going to tell me when I get off. This is also the step when I'll start working on creating my verbal cue, where I can just say place and I can point to the mat and have my dog go to it. So I'm going to take my dog. I'm just going to kind of lead them over to the mat. I'm going to lure my dog using a treat or kind of pointing with my finger or maybe just my body, depending on the dog, and encourage them to get up on the mat. Once the dog's up there, I'm going to do a series of yes and rewarding on the mat, and then I'm going to release my dog off of the mat, and I'm going to do it again. Ready? Yes. 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 Okay. Good job. Girl, you ready? You want to do it again? Come. Yes. 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 Okay. Good girl. All right, so that's how it starts. Now, my dog in this video already knows how to do the behavior, so you guys might have noticed that she was moving to the mat right away and lying down. With your own dogs, they're probably going to start by stepping up on the mat or maybe offering a sit on the mat and not necessarily dropping into it down, and that's fine. We don't want to tell our dogs to lie down. What we want to do is just take that treat, kind of put it to their nose and sort of lure them to lie down and feed the treat on the mat itself. Again, we're always feeding our treats on the mat to encourage our dog to lie down. So when do I add the verbal cue? Once my dog has done this a few times and I feel really sure that if I move to the mat and I point towards it, that my dog's gonna climb up onto the mat, fall into that down position and stay put, then I'm gonna name the behavior. It might take my dog a few days or even a week or so before you're getting that consistent moving into the down position on the mat, and that's fine. And we're gonna add our verbal cue only once our dog is ready, right? When I add my verbal cue, my finished behavior looks like this. Ready? Place. Yes. So now I have a dog who knows to move to the mat when I ask them to. Yes. Stay on the mat while I mark and reward for a minute. Gradually slow down the marking and rewarding. Yes. So if I've got a young puppy, I might start this game pretty quick. Yes, treat, yes, treat, yes, treat. Okay, off the mat. And now I'm gonna work on yes, treat, and slowing that down. So now my dog is learning to stay on the mat for longer and settling into the exercise and just waiting to hear that release cue. Yes. Okay. Okay. Good girl. Nice job. Very good. Okay. So that's step one. Now I might stay at that stage for several days or even up to a week, however long it takes, before my dog is really demonstrating that they understand this concept, right? My dog should be not jumping off the mat before I release them. My dog should be ideally moving into that down position on their own, because again, all of the treats have been placed down towards the mat. My dog should be starting to show that they understand that when we point to the mat or when we say the word place, that we want them to get up onto the mat and to lie down. So there's quite a lot just in that first step, right? We don't need to be in a hurry again to walk away from our dog, move around, and do other things. But once our dog has that basics after the first few days of practicing, or first couple of sessions of practicing, depending on how often you practice and how well your dog picks this up, then we're going to move on to adding distance and distractions from this mat, because I want my dog to realize that they can stay on the mat even if I'm not standing right in front of them, right? That's the whole point of this final behavior, is I want to be able to just tell my dog to go lay on their mat and have them stay there while I walk around or do things in the house. So let's show you what that looks like. Ready? Place? Yes. So if I'm beginning to add distractions or distances to my mat work, yes, I'm going to start with just something simple. I might march in place. Yes. Mark and reward my dog. I might wave my legs a little bit. Yes. Reward. I might wave my hands around a little bit. Yes. Reward. Right? I'm just helping my dog realize that even if I move, even if things change a little bit about this picture, yes, that the dog should just stay on the mat and wait for their release cue. Good girl. Now, I'm not going to release her because she's good at this game, and I'm just going to move on to the next step. But if you were doing this at home, you would do little bits of distractions, reward your dog, distract a little, reward your dog, distract, reward, and then release them off the mat and start again. And we'd practice that until it was pretty good. But Maddie already knows that, so we're going to move right on. Once my dog is understanding that I can stay on the mat, even if the human does some silly things, yes, that's all part of the game. Now I'm going to move on to adding distance. So when I add distance from my mat, I start with a single step, typically to the side, not backwards. So I'm going to step sideways, yes, or click, step back, and reward the dog. Whenever I'm doing distance patterns on the mat, I'm always going to mark at the furthest distance. So right before I'm heading back to my dog to reward, that's my mark point, my click point, or my yes. Step, yes, step back, reward. Take another direction, step, yes, step back, reward. Now, you might have a dog who's really bouncy, really jumpy, or really used to following you around, and maybe you try to take that one step and they jump off the mat every time, right? We go, all right, well, how do we add distance? I can make that single step easier, right? I could start with leaning as if I was stepping, yes, coming back, rewarding my dog for staying on the mat while I did that, doing that a few times, yes, back to reward, a couple of times, and then taking that full step, yes, back to reward, right? Timing on that marker is important. I tell my students this all the time. We're making a clear, predictable pattern to the dog. I know that if we're just taking one step, it seems silly. Does it matter, Mim, if I mark here? Yes. Or if I mark when I'm back here? Yes, right? It does matter, because as we start to add more distance, I want my dog to understand that my mark is going to come at the midway point of this exercise. Once they hear the mark, it means I'm coming back and I'm going to be getting that reinforcement, right? So as I start to add a lot of distance to this behavior, yes. I don't know if you guys can still hear that on the video, but once I reached that furthest point where I was walking to, I marked yes, and then I rewarded my dog. I returned, At my distance, yes. Back. And reward my dog. Good girl. Ready? Okay. So we always want to remember to give our dog plenty of breaks while we're working on mat work, because it's a challenging behavior that we're asking them to do, to just hold still for a long time on that mat. So I'm going to give my dog plenty of breaks, especially if they're new at playing this game, and I want to make sure that they really understand the entire pattern. So I start with building up some duration on the mat, slowing down my yes and my treat so that my dog is spending more time on the mat. Then I start working on, good girl, on my distractions and my distances, just moving around a little bit with my body, walking around and building up to being able to walk all around the room or all around the yard, or whatever it is that I'm using as my training space, that I can add a lot of distance to that behavior. And then from there, I'm going to start to work on distracting my dog a little bit more. I'm changing the picture so that this looks a little bit more like real life. So let me just show you kind of what I mean about that, for example, here. You ready? Ready? Place. Yes. Good. So now, things that I want to do, I start to work on distracting my dog a little bit more and disconnecting from my dog a little bit more. So as you can see, as I'm working on this, I'm making a lot of eye contact. I'm facing my dog. I'm being really clear about what it is I want the dog to do. As I progress with this training, I want to be able to turn away, to disconnect from my dog, to pick things up in the environment, to bend down, to turn and talk to somebody. I don't want to have to stare at my dog the entire time to keep them on their mat. So I'm going to start training for that. I'm going to back away from my dog and I'm going to turn. Yes. Back and reward. And I'm going to practice breaking my eye contact with my dog. I'm going to work on practicing turning and taking a couple of steps. Yes. Back and reward. Make sure my dog understands I don't have to be looking at them for this game to be the same, right? I might practice bending down, tying my shoe. Yes. Coming back, rewarding my dog. Spinning around a little bit. Yes. Rewarding my dog, right? If I have a chair, I might work on my dog's on the mat and I'm going to go sit on my chair. Yes. Right? I want my dog to understand to hold that position on the mat until I tell them, okay, that they can leave. Right? Maddie says she doesn't actually want to leave. She's getting lots of treats and she's having a good time. Good girl. At that point, I've got a dog who can go to the mat on cue, who can stay for varying degrees of duration, who can stay there while I move away from them, who doesn't need me to be making direct eye contact the whole time, where I can kind of turn and talk to my friend who might be there, or my partner, my family member. I can sit in a chair, I can bend over and tie my shoe, and my dog has figured out that this is just part of that mat work game. At that point, what I'm going to do is move on to working on distractions that are specific to my final sort of plan for this behavior. So for example, a lot of times we're just looking to use this behavior to kind of control unruly behavior in the house and have a calmer household, move our dogs out of the way when we want to do something. So I might start by asking my dog to move to their mat and then turning around and picking up an item in the environment, just a coffee cup or a notebook that's sitting down. Pick it up, put it down, yes, reward the dog. Pick it up, carry it around, yes, reward the dog. Open a cupboard, yes, go back and reward the dog. Open the dishwasher, yes, go back and reward the dog. Stay tuned and I'll make another video inside my house that shows you how we then take that mat work skill and really turn it into a dog who's able to just hang out while we do things in the house, like fold the laundry, do the dishes, clean, cook, all of that kind of stuff. Thanks, guys.